And we're back at the Barry Foster Show, and we have the beautiful and lovely Cathi Chamberlain with us, author of Rules for Deplorables, and now working on a new book. Good morning, Cathi. How you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you doing, Barry? Great to talk to you again.
It's good to talk to you. For the folks who don't know, I'd like to kind of do a little background. On Cathi Chamberlain 101. I did not realize that you really grew up as rather a liberal when in your early days.
Well, I actually grew up with a split family. My mother was pretty liberal. My dad was very conservative, so he usually ruled the roost. But I got out of home when I was 17 and moved to California, and that's probably what you're thinking of because we grew up in Virginia, and it was pretty conservative at that time. But once I got to California, I really got sucked into that bubble thinking and that liberal. And so, yeah, from my 15 years there, I became pretty much what we call a flaming liberal. You'd never know.
When did you have your aha moment?
Actually, good question. That was when I was introduced to L. Ross Perot, believe it or not. And I was so impressed with his whiteboards and his way of thinking. And I just thought, my gosh, this is what our country needs. And I actually volunteered for his campaign. And so I remained a good loyalist to him and the Independent Party. So I switched from Democrat to Independent for about 25 years until I fell in love with another guy, and we would know that to be President Donald J. Trump, and I ended up switching my party again. That was in 2015 to Republican, just so I could vote for him in the primary.
That's amazing. Well, now were you a home inspector? Is that how you fell off the ladder? Is that what you were doing?
No, actually, I did a lot of fixer-uppers in my neighborhood with my ex-husband, and we got so into a lot of like construction stuff that I ended up getting my license as a Florida state building contractor, and then I ended up opening a company, all-female construction company, which ended up being the first in the nation, which surprised me, and had the pink pickup trucks going all around, and it was a lot of fun. I called it tool timing baby dolls, but we did very, very good work. It was all female. And so that, that went along for quite a while. And then I ended up going off on my own doing roof inspections because there was just a lot more money in it. And, being a small business owner can be very taxing. And of course, that was in the Obama years, so there wasn't a whole lot of help. But yeah, and so it was during Hurricane Irma back in 2017. I was inspecting a roof on a mobile home, and my ladder just slid to the left. I fell backwards right on a concrete slab and ended up breaking my back, both wrists, and getting life-threatening blood clots. So I basically, because I had to be on blood thinners, I couldn't really operate machinery. I couldn't do any of the things I love most, and so I ended up writing a book.
Yeah, and this is where I begin to come into contact with Cathi Chamberlain. You wrote maybe the quintessential rule book for conservatives, although it's called Rules for Deplorables, based on as a liberal, were you familiar with Saul Alinski, or how were you able to take the Alinski book and turn it on its ear?
Well, as I was recovering in the hospital for months, and then in rehab, I was getting so annoyed at the news because of the way they were reporting some of the tactics that our own president was using to fight his enemies. And I knew instinctively that they were Alinski tactics because most liberals are conditioned to read Alinski's book, Rules for Radicals. That's kind of like the Bible of the left, if you will. And so they know these tactics and they use them as second nature, and the shame of it. And I was thinking, my gosh, why aren't Republicans using these tactics, recognizing them first off when they are being used against our president, and recognizing them when our president was using them himself, whether he knew it or not. They were excellent to use against the left, but our side, being the principled side that we are, were just, appalled that he would turn some of these tactics back on the Democrats. And so that's when I realized that an educational book on his tactics was needed.
Yeah, and as you begin to, the thing that I find interesting is they can dish it out, but they can't take it. That
That's for sure.
they can put these tactics into effect, but when someone uses those same tactics against them, they really don't know how to stop them.
No, they don't. And I was thinking about one the other day when I saw that the Trump administration put all those signs up right where the media would not be able to avoid looking at them in covering his press conferences or what have you. All those signs along the street there that listed the MS-13 gangs and listed their crimes, and a logical society would look at those and say, oh my gosh, I can't believe all those criminals have been removed, thank God. But no, of course not. The left doesn't, that has to create their own crises, but to make Trump look bad. But the interesting thing about that one is that his administration used Alinski tactic number 6 on that one, and that is use tactics that your people enjoy. That's not used very often by Republicans because we have no sense of humor, like the Democrats do, because they just love to troll Republicans with things like that. So it was perfect. I'd love to see that. Yeah.
So you were able to go down through the list of Alinsky tactics and show us how to put those into effect for conservative causes.
Yeah, that's right. I start off each chapter of my book with one tactic. So there's 13 tactics and I have 13 chapters. And what I do is I first kind of explain the tactic, and then I use current events to illustrate how those tactics are being used against us. It's very, very effective.
After you published the book, and this has been about 6 years now? Has it been 6 years since you?
Yes, I released it in 2019. So yes.
So have you gotten feedback after publishing a book myself? Okay, I get a lot of, well, you know what you ought to do. So did you
Oh
get a
yeah.
lot? Did you get a lot of, well, you know what you ought to do? Did you get a lot of that
Oh
that
my
kind of feedback?
gosh. Yes, and some of it's great. I love feedback, as long as it's constructive criticism and not bashing you, because I did get a lot of bashing, especially from establishment Republicans, who the most common thing I'd hear from them is, you're telling us to be unethical and to lose our principles in order to win this war. And I'm like, well, if we don't have a country, it's not going to matter. And I think the biggest misunderstanding within the Republican Party between, let's say, the establishment versus the populists or the MAGA group, or what we like to be called today, America Firsters, the biggest difference is that we see that we are about to lose our country. They don't. They see it as politics as usual. And so there's no urgency there. So when they see what we are complaining about and what's important to us, they think they call us crazy. They think we're crazy lunatics or conspiracy theorists. I'm just writing in my new book, which I know we'll get to, but about these smart cities, which should be a big concern to every single city in this country right now, because once the globalists have those established, and they're pretty close, with the help of these, let's call them useful idiots. That's how Saul Alinski referred to puppets that are blind, but they just follow the lead because they think it's politics as usual. And so if we don't wise up and understand what's coming, we're going to be in big trouble, Barry. I know you know that.
Well, yeah, and this is the kind of thing that we're talking a little bit about. And just to back up, it's interesting that they consider some of these unethical. I just think they're just smart tactics. For instance, rule number one is power is not only what you have, but what the enemy thinks you have, which is, by the way, Sun Tzu, the great Chinese general.
That's right.
And never go outside the expertise of your people. Conversely, whenever possible, go outside the expertise of the enemy.
Correct.
Make the enemy live up to its own book of rules.
Yep.
Ridicule, humor, the man's most potent weapon. I don't see how this, and none of these are immoral. They're just good tactics, and being able to do that to them, making the left live up to their own rules. When you start asking them questions, you've seen the interviews where they start asking, "What is a woman?" and they walk away. So I think that
Yes.
this was a stroke of genius. And are you still getting people going, "Gosh, I never saw this before. When did you publish this?"
Yes, amazingly. I thought I'd been to about every single club in the state in the last 5 years, but I just went to one 2 weeks ago that had never seen me before. So this is a timeless book, even though the events may not be current in that they're 5 years old. But what's really amazing to me, Barry, and I'm so excited over it, is that many things that I chose as current events back 5 years ago are now coming to the head today, like the Russia collusion. It's amazing. I reread my chapter and I'm like, oh my God, I knew it was coming. I saw this. And because I really laid the whole Russian collusion thing out in such a way, even including what's her name? Ellie Orr, I think is her. I'm not sure Ellie is the first name, but who was the wife of the FBI agent. And I mean, all these things are flooding back to me that are coming out in the news today, which is really cool to see that.
It's extremely gratifying, and now you've gone on from rules for deplorables to rules for rhinos. And I'm very, for the folks that don't know, RINO, RINO, is Republican in name only. So what kind of rules are you publishing for rhinos, for crying out loud?
Well, that is a question that I'm getting a lot right now, but people have really harped on me to come out with a sequel. I have some very, very loyal supporters those are the ones who read my book 4 and 5 times because there's over 400 footnotes in it. And so they dog ear it and highlight it. And so they're really waiting for a sequel to come out. But as you know, I've been so busy in activism work with J6ers and election integrity that I've had to put kind of all this to the side. So basically, I've given it a lot of thought. And as a sequel, I really want to keep the same kind of theme with title and subtitle and chapters and how the whole thing's laid out and formatted. And so rules for rhinos kind of sounds like the opposite of rules for. I am not giving the rhinos rules. They wouldn't listen to me anyway. These are going to be rules to use against the rhinos. And we need those because many people have no clue even what a rhino is yet. But those who do know full well that rhinos are one of the biggest obstacles to Trump and getting his agenda put forth this next 4 years. If rhinos have been dividing the party for many, many years. They like to say that the MAGA group are the dividers. but it's simply not true. MAGA is happy to work with everybody so that we can get the agenda done. Why? Because we know how dangerous the coming years are going to be. But because the RINOs don't see the urgency like we do, they feel very threatened by the America Firsters, even though we're the majority. That they're not interested in even having us in the party. And I know you know that there's been a lot of division around our state with the current Republican Party of Florida, with kicking people out of the Republican Party, even when they get elected as state committeemen, like Trent Wayman was up there in Manatee. It's just it's shocking, but they really have a vendetta against America Firsters, and we have got to get into these local communities, our local communities, in order to get America First candidates in, because if we don't, the RINOs will, and who they're putting up are just like them. So if we continue to allow the establishment in our party select our candidates, we're going to continue to get people in office where we see them turning down bills that, for example, that Trump wants to put through, or our governor wants to put through. Good bills that make sense. We just saw it in this last session up in Tallahassee. It was crazy. I mean, people are furious about some of the things that did not get passed. Some good things did, and I'm real happy to see that. But I'm not sure they went far enough because they get so watered down. We don't have time for this nonsense. So this book is going to be, I think you're going to love it, Barry, and so will many of my supporters. I take people from what I believe is the most immediate threat against Trump, which are the RINOs, because they sabotage him at every. We just saw Anonymous. Did you see that Miles Taylor, who was the anonymous writer of that letter back in 2018 when Trump was in office, and he was talking about there's no adults in the room, we are the adults, and somebody has to control Trump. Remember that letter?
Yes, absolutely.
Yes. Well, I wrote about that in my book, so it was really fun to see that come out. He's in big trouble these days, but that's what I'm talking about. That are hamstringing Trump. So I take it the first chapter is Rhino War on MAGA, and I lay it all out and also give a really good description of how the Republican Party is organized, so that people understand and give tips on how you can get into your Republican Party and what you need to look for and all that. And then my next chapter is the next big saboteur, which is the establishment, and that's called The Establishment Hates You. Then I go on to the elitist to the vote. The title of that one is Elitist to Voters Eat Cake. Then into the Uniparty, and this is really how people progress into the Republican Party. When they first get in, they could be America Firsters, but in time they get up to becoming part of the Uniparty, and the next is the swamp. Then next is the deep state, and then the shadow government, the cabal, and then globalists. And then I spend the next 4 chapters really diving deep into how to turn these things around to our benefit. But yeah, so I'm hoping that this wakes a lot of people up and gives them the courage to get into their local Republican Party and start making the changes we need in order to help Trump get his agenda through. This is going to be a short 4 years.
You know, Cathi, I love you, but how long is this book? I mean, you've delved into about 10 very deep and meaty subjects before you get to the what do we do about it?
Yeah, well, each chapter is the way. I'm already into chapter 4 now, and each one has some solutions within the chapters as well. But the final ones just kind of flush them all out. because I'm each chapter I'm starting with the tactic and showing how it's being used against us, and then how to turn it back, that same tactic. So there's a lot in each chapter. This one's actually going to be shorter than my first one. My first one was 330, I think, pages long, but this one is going to be probably close under 200. So yeah, it'll be an easier read, but packed filled with good info.
Yeah, Kathy, one of your speeches are like drinking from a fire hydrant. There is just so much there. Do you still are you still doing your podcast?
No, I kind of had to put that away when I got hit by all three of those hurricanes that came through last
Hmm.
year. And that's when I put those down. I was just really overwhelmed because I'm still doing a lot of activist work with Defend Florida on the election integrity and stuff. But now I've kind of put it all to the side to get this book done. I'm hoping to have this book, and it looks like I'm going to be right on track by the end of the summer. And so I just don't have time for the podcast. That I may pick that back up again because I really enjoy doing that, and people loved my podcast. But can't do everything, right, Barry?
Well, you can be on my podcast anytime you want. Now, for the folks who are just hearing this for the first time, never heard about rules for deplorables, or maybe even never heard about Defend Florida, they can still go to your website and get all of that and more, right?
Yeah, not so much on Defend Florida, but if they email me, I'll put them in the right direction, certainly. But they can go to my website, rulesfordeplorablesbook.com. And I even have a manuscript up there, Barry, because there was so much of a time difference between my first book and now this sequel. I had put together a manuscript of a lot of the articles that I've had published in between time. And they're also in the same vein, in the same format as my book. So I do sell those at my speeches. I have a speech coming up for anybody who might live near Martin County. That's going to be on Tuesday. I'm not sure when this podcast is going to be heard by people, but if they'd like to email me, they can reach me through my website, rulesfordeplorablesbook.com.
I am privileged to not only have a copy of Rules for Deplorables, but also the select writings by Cathi Chamberlain, which is, by the way, sitting right here in front of me, and you can find everything at rulesfordeplorablesbook.com, or you can get Kathy at Kathy at rulesfordeplorablesbook.com. And is the deplorablereport.com still up? Is that still up?
You know what? I had to take that down. It just got too expensive running all these websites and what
Yeah.
have you, and not being on the circuit for, since COVID hit. That really slowed down my speeches and book sales. So I did take that down, but that's really where I got a lot of the articles that I put into the manuscript.
Yeah, this makes great reading. It's good nighttime reading, and all of these rules that she's taken and turned on their head really do work very well. Humor is of course, my favorite, but one of her rule number 8, which we also embrace, is keep on the pressure.
Yes.
And this is going to be with the RINOs who are well entrenched. I'm not sure that having Republicans in office for 40 years is any better than having Democrats in office for 40 years. I think it's time that we start getting people who really look at the Republic and the way the Republic was set up. And that's where, Cathi Chamberlain, Defend Florida, Rules for Deplorables, that's where that all kind of all comes together.
Yep, that's exactly, you're right. I'm with you on that. Because both parties are very corrupt at this point. And right now, what Trump is trying to clean out our bureaucracy and our government and the swamp and all that. But eventually, somebody's got to clean out the party.
Yeah.
So that's hopefully, something that we can get done in the next 4 years. If everybody, though, people tend to want to watch their Netflix, and that's fine. And that's because they don't think we have a problem, because both parties tell us we have no problem. They'd love to say, oh, no, there's that election wasn't stolen. Oh no, everything's fine. We're the gold standard in elections. No, folks, we are not the gold standard at all. Not even close to it. If that's the gold standard, our country's in trouble.
Yeah, exactly right. Kathy, thank you so much. I really appreciate you being with us. When we get closer to the publishing of the book, I want you to come back and be back on again with us, would you?
100%.
You can find
Thank you,
her.
Barry.
Oh, it's certainly my pleasure. If you want to find out more, rules for deplorablesbook.com, or you can send Kathy an email at Kathy, that's Cathi, Kathy at rulesfordeplorablesbook.com. You've been listening to the Barry Foster Show, and we'll see you next time.